Okay, people, it's time for us to go back behind the blue. Today, we're going to talk about the 50 Shades of Bray Foundry Favorites video for Destiny 2 and go over my creative process. This one was a lot of fun to make, but it was also challenging, and we're going to find out why. Now, let's get started. Just like we did last time, we are going to start at the beginning of the video and break down the different segments as they came up. This one, like I said, it was very challenging. And the main thing that was difficult for me for this one, compared to the previous video, which was Cowboys and Guardians, the Huckleberry and Crimson exotic review for Destiny 2, was the fact that there wasn't a conceptual through line. So what do I mean by that? In the previous video, Cowboys and Guardians, the overall theme for the video was Cowboys are awesome. So I went into it with the security and the knowledge that every second, every frame of the video was going to scream cowboy, Midwestern United States, gunslinger, high noon, ride 'em and die, get bull, whatever, cowboy stuff. But for this one, there were a lot of different concepts at play. Each different section had a slightly different feel to it. So it was a struggle coming up with the visual style for each of the different parts. And we'll start with the first section and talk about the visual style for that one. And by the way, there's an ice cream truck parked outside my apartment right now. And I don't know if you can hear it. If you can, you probably have great headphones. If you can't, then whatever. So, the first section of the video, the first 10 seconds is the introduction, and this was setting up the concept. But the concept that we set up in the beginning and the style that we set up in the beginning didn't come back into play until way later in the video. So we start off trying to convey the sense of discovery. The goal for this video was to explore the Bray tech weapons, the Clovis Bray guns. So the Destiny 2 Warmind DLC added some new weapons that you could collect, and they were all made by the Clovis Bray Foundry. So I thought it'd be interesting to explore those weapons and see which ones are good, which ones are not so good, and then finish off with the, I think penultimate is the right word. Right, yeah, so yeah, I wanted to go in and talk about all of the different Braytech weapons, which ones are good, which ones not so good, and then finish with the penultimate being the exotic Polaris Lance scout rifle. So we start off trying to convey a real sense of wonderment and exploration. I wanted it to feel like we were stepping foot into this vast, unexplored territory, which in a lot of ways it was, because the expansion, or the DLC rather, it added a completely new area, new guns to collect, new characters and whatnot. So it really was an exploratory process, and it's like that with every game when you come in and you get that new expansion or that new piece of content. It's an exploration, and I wanted that to come across. So instead of doing an exciting compilation where we're blowing off heads and taking names, it's just a bunch of slow panning shots of different areas around the Clovis Bray facility. So the first one, upon further inspection, I'm not super happy with it. I think the composition could have been a little bit better. If you look at the screen right now, you'll notice there's a lot of empty space on the left of the frame, and the right side of the frame is very busy. So I could have angled it a little bit better to give a more even spread, so that the eye can just sort of wander from left to right and not feel like, okay, all the action is on the right side, I'm just going to look there. So that's one thing that I wish I did a little bit better, just change the pan for this shot and fix it up. But something that did work out well for this shot, even though the overall composition is a little bit dull, I tried to frame as best as possible the Rasputin triangle here with this dome shape on the Braytech facility, get it as centered as possible, and it wound up looking all right, but we have just, I feel that there's way too much empty space in the left side of the frame. So moving on to the next ones, I didn't have nearly as many problems with the way I composed the shots, but one of the issues with creating these slow panning shots in Destiny 2 is that there's no true way to go into a third-person camera without showing the weapon. This is a little trick that I found out on Reddit. Somebody told me that if you take out a third-person weapon like a sword or do an emote while your back is against the wall, you can remove your character from view. So that's how I was able to get these particular angles. But the problem is there are some angles that you can't capture in this way because there's no wall. So if there was a shot that I thought looked really good, but there was no wall, it's over. You can't get it. So there was that restriction in it. But thankfully, most of the other shots are stuff that I would have gotten even if there wasn't that restriction. So this one, we just see the Clovis Bray sign in the background. We got a little bit of map of the facility, just a couple of interesting things for the eye to look at. Next scene is pretty much the same thing. We're panning across. We've got in the backdrop a Clovis Bray banner that's sliding across a sort of flat screen display that's wrapped around a pillar, and then more Clovis Bray lit up. It's just a lot of stuff for the eye to look at, and you get a sense of the scope and the size of the building, these gigantic windows. It's a very, very huge building. And then we end it with this really dramatic skylit room with a Rasputin statue in it. This little diamond shape is the Rasputin statue, and it's all very, very eerie because it's a rundown building, but it gives you that sense that, okay, we're about to explore something, and it matches up with the script where we're looking for hidden gems, and we might actually find some garbage, but hopefully we find a diamond in the rough. So the next section of the video is where we talk about the Niflheim Frost. I had such a difficult time pronouncing that weapon name correctly when I was recording the script, but I think I finally got it. It's the Niflheim Frost. I was saying Nephilim for a really long time, but I'm pretty sure it's Niflheim. If it's not, it's too late now. So this section of the video is where we start getting into the concepts and stuff. So this weapon was tricky. It was tricky to do, right? Because it wasn't that well defined, right? If we again go back to the Cowboys and Guardians video, we had a very strong concept. Cowboys, gunslingers. It's high noon. That was an easy thing to conceptualize. But this is just a regular gun. The Niflheim Frost it's just a plain old scout rifle, but it has some special perks that made it into something a little bit more fun, a little bit more exciting than the typical scout rifle, designated marksman rifle type weapon. So we start off by trying to convey that point that normal scout rifles, normal DMRs, they're good, but they're a little bit boring. And what I decided to do here was to exaggerate the level of boredom that one might experience when using a DMR scout rifle style weapon. So we're just standing in one spot shooting at enemies from extreme distances, and this is totally it's movie magic 100% in the sense that the game is never played in this way. It's never this slow, it's never this level of boring, but in order to create that stark contrast between a regular scout rifle and the Niflheim Frost, I had to stretch the truth as much as possible. But at the same time, it's not too much of a stretch because the Niflheim Frost is actually a lot more fun than honestly all the other scout rifles in the game, with the exception of maybe the Polaris Lance, but that even that's kind of debatable. So we get that slow, boring scout rifle play, and then we contrast it with the Niflheim Frost cinematic section. But before we go into that, there's something that I've been doing different in this series of videos, and I'm going to continue making this change, and I might bring it back and I might not, but it's the removal of the title cards. So you may have noticed that in some of my older videos and guides that at the start of every new section of a video, I'll put a title card with the name of the section and what's going on. So it'll be something like insert title here, and then subtext here, and it'll look something like this. Right, so it'll fade to black, and then the title card will come up introducing the next section. And what was interesting is that each of the sections has a name still. This section that we're working on and we're talking about now with the Niflheim Frost is called A Symphony of Bullets. But I don't have the title card in. And the reason I kept it out is because I wanted to try as hard as possible to convey the concept of a symphony of bullets without explicitly stating that that's what I'm going for. So when we move on to the cinematic section of the Niflheim Frost, oh my god, I can't speak today. Apparently I can never speak when I'm doing these things. When we move into the cinematic section of the Niflheim Frost section of the video, then we can see the Symphony of Bullets concept coming in at full force. And overall, this was not a particularly difficult section in terms of the type of edits that were going on. It was just a matter of syncing up the bullet sounds and the explosions with the music. But the real difficult part was capturing it and actually performing the actions. Because I'm a pretty average gamer, maybe a little bit above average because I play a bit more than the average Joe, but some of these headshots, man, I messed up so many times, and it was a grind just going into these areas, these lost sectors or these mini dungeons, and trying so hard to just get the perfect 2 taps on these enemies. It was a pain in the freaking behind. It was a pain in the ass, but it was totally worth it. And in the end, I think I want to say I went a little bit crazy when I was trying to capture the footage for this part, because after a certain point, I wasn't getting the bullet sounds to sync up correctly. I would be either a little bit slow on the trigger pulls or a little bit too fast, and just things kept going wrong. So I started actually humming the song to myself while I was playing the game, and it eventually just started working. And it got to a point where I was just playing the game, humming the song, not even worrying about getting the clips. And then I ended up getting some of the sequences that we see here, and just this one was a mess. I mean, it was an absolute mess trying to create this perfect symphony like we mentioned, and the song had a big impact on conveying that Symphony of Bullets energy. And even further than conveying the symphony aspect, the song had to be one that started off a little bit dull. So the song starts off very slow, and it's almost like a carousel circus song, but when it gets to the Symphony of Bullets portion, we'll call it the cinematic section, then it amps up and you really feel the energy. But it's still an orchestral kind of chamber music type song. If anybody can figure out the actual genre for this song, then feel free to let me know what you think it might be, but I'm just gonna call it generic orchestral or modern orchestral. I don't know, but it's a Symphony of Bullets, and it worked out really well. But this was definitely a difficult section to capture the footage for. The edits, they took some time as well, just because I had a lot of stuff to comb through, but overall the execution wasn't anything overly complicated, so it worked out. It was pretty good. I'm definitely happy with the way this section came out. This is probably my second favorite section of the video out of like there's 4 sections, so it's my second favorite, so that's pretty good. Anyway, we'll move on to the next bit. The Braytech Winter Wolf weapon does not have a cinematic section, and that was a deliberate choice, because I felt like I needed to drive home the point that the Braytech Winter Wolf is not a cool weapon. It's very dull and boring. It's basically the same as every other auto rifle, assault rifle that exists in the game already, and that's kind of disappointing. right? Because when you go into a new game or a new DLC, you want to find new guns that do things differently than the ones you've already collected. Then meanwhile, you fast forward to exploring the Braytech facilities and opening up these secret caches, and you get a code for this special new weapon, and it's the Braytech Winter Wolf, and it's just a basic ass auto rifle that doesn't do anything special. You're like, well, that's kind of disappointing. So by omitting the cinematic portion with just music and gameplay and fancy edits, I feel like that drove home the point that it was a little bit disappointing. That, coupled with just the overall script saying that I was disappointed with the weapon several times, I think helped convey that point pretty well. And it served a dual role. This section with the Braytech Winter Wolf was the introduction to the Polaris lands. It was a good separation between what was a pretty exciting start to the video, because the Niflheim Frost, the whole section was fun. It was a lot of fun, and the weapon itself is a lot of fun, and I had nothing but really good things to say about it besides the fact that it drinks bullets. I mean, a little anecdote about it is when I'm playing with the Niflheim Frost just for fun, in case you haven't watched the video, which you should have probably already done by now, but one of the perks on the weapon is called Drop Magazine, which means if you reload, your reload speed is lightning quick, but you throw away the remaining bullets in the magazine. So sometimes I'll go into a dungeon, which are called strikes in Destiny 2, and within the first 3 minutes of the dungeon, I will have 0 bullets in my Niflheim Frost. But I still enjoy using it because there's a certain joy in just pow, 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 reload, pow, 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 reload, pow, pow, pow. Shit, I'm out of bullets. Well, all right, I guess the fun's over. There's a certain amount of enjoyment in that, and I think that level of energy existed in the Niflheim Frost section of the video. So I needed to break up that joy. I needed to just bring it to this slow and sort of disappointed area, so that when we transition to the final section of the video with the Polaris Lance, we get to really climb back up and just jump into the light in the best way possible. And I definitely think it was a success, and there was a lot of fun stuff that went on in this section. There were a couple of parts that I imagined going a little bit differently, and maybe we'll talk about that, but overall, I was happy with the section. So we close out by saying the Braytech Winter Wolf is freaking boring, and even the Niflheim Frost, it's a bit much. It's a little bit too crazy, and I never use it in raids because ammunition is a hot commodity in Destiny 2. So it's not a go-to weapon, despite the fact that it's good and it's a lot of fun. It's kind of a joke. You just kind of put it to the side. So that's not what you really wanted, though, or that's not what I wanted, I should say, from the Braytech weapons. I wanted something spectacular, because I did a little bit of reading about Clovis Bray on Google and the concept behind the character, and he's supposed to be the creator of this company that just made some of the most important technologies in the Destiny 2 universe. Meanwhile, he's given us these basic ass guns. What's the deal? Well, the deal is that they put all of their best tech into the final weapon, which is the Polaris Lance. So I had to put the most beauty and pack the most emphasis into this final section. So the Braytech Winter Wolf, it brought us down, and then we bring ourselves back up very slowly with the introduction to the next section. So we start off by showing more sections of the Braytech facility, the interiors, the exteriors, and a little bit of Rasputin. And then as the song is getting ready to explode, we show the Polaris Lance and just a slow pan, and it's just it's a new image that we haven't seen before. It's supposed to create this moment where you're watching it and you've seen, excuse me, I just ate lunch and I'm burping a little bit. You saw all these other guns for the last 5 minutes, and now all of a sudden, ooh, what's that? That's a new one. So it's supposed to give you that kind of feeling when the Polaris Lance shows up for the first time. Then we move into more slow panning shots of the other weapons that we talked about, and then finally we move into Polaris Lance gameplay. Now, as we moved into the Polaris Lance gameplay, a lot of interesting stuff happened in this section, and I treated this entire section of Polaris Lance as a cinematic portion. So normally the cinematic sections are only about 10 to maybe 15 seconds long. So if we go back to the Niflheim Frost, it's about a 20-second section, which is pretty long. Maybe it's a little bit less. We'll call it 15 in actuality. So the cinematic sections that you'll see in my videos are usually only about 15 seconds long. But with the Polaris Lance, I treated the entire an entire minute-long stretch as if it were a cinematic section of the video. And what was important here was to differentiate between the different components within. So we start off going to that initial theme of discovery, where we're listening to the music swell, and we're fading in and fading out to these different parts of the Bray facility, and then, ooh, what's this? We discover for the first time the Polaris Lance, but we don't know what it is yet. I'm being very careful in the script not to mention the gun by name. So we're discovering all these different things, and we're wandering around with our other weapons, and then finally we discover the Polaris Lance and we get to see it in action. And what was important here for me was I was trying to introduce the visual style that we were going to see throughout the rest of the Polaris Lance footage, right? I went a little bit Zack Snyder on this part of the video. There's a gratuitous use of slow motion, but it looked so pretty. This gun is all about making big explosions with fire, and slow motion makes the fire and the explosions in Destiny 2 look amazing. So I introduced that slow motion concept by slowing down a clip while I'm still talking, and that's sort of the first taste of the destructive power and the beauty that comes of the Polaris Lance. And then we see it in full effect in the main cinematic section. Yeah, I mean, this section, it was difficult to make, just like the Niflheim Frost section, but it was a bit more fun because I was able to play around with more than just the gun. In a lot of the clips, I wasn't even showing off the gun. I was just showing off pretty fire explosions and the different flame-based abilities in the game. But I just wanted to make this segment pretty engaging to the eyes, engaging to the ears, and have as much stuff blowing up as possible while also showing off the power of the gun. And I hate to oversimplify it by saying it worked out, but it definitely worked out. And the biggest help for this portion of the video was the song selection, because I have a decent amount of electronic style music. I guess I don't know if this is trance or whatever, but we'll just say it's electronic style music. But this song, it's when I found it on epidemicsounds.com, the royalty-free site, it screamed Polaris Lance, it screamed compilation, and there's so much room to play with the beats and the high points and the low points. And my personal favorite of the edits within the section is reloading the Polaris Lance. And you'll see right here, there's an empty audio file. This is just the reloading sound effect for the Polaris Lance, and the reload is in time, in tune, in beat with the beat of the song. And that was my personal favorite edit, but the song really determined and really helped to elevate this section into something better than what it would have been otherwise. Because I had a couple of other choices for music that I wanted to use, but none of it had the same impact as this one, and I'm really happy with the way it came out. And yeah, I think that's gonna pretty much wrap it up. So again, we started off with the slow, mysterious, but innocent discovery of Clovis Bray and the different weapons that are found within. We move into the scout rifles are boring section, but the Niflheim Frost, it's still a scout rifle, but it's got something special up its sleeve. It's a little bit unhinged, a little bit crazy. Then we switch over to the Braytech Winter Wolf, the ultimate disappointment, and we bring it all back home with the Polaris Lance. We slowly build into this amazing crescendo, the light show of explosions, and the very, very awesome song that allowed me to play within a very fun space. Yeah, and if I had to grade myself on it, I would probably give myself a 7.5, maybe an 8 if I'm feeling good. Just because I feel like I successfully wove together all of these different feeling sections of the video into something relatively cohesive. It didn't feel disjointed. I remember when I was watching Batman v Superman. Was it No, it was the Justice League, the one with Steppenwolf. And yeah, when I was watching the Justice League on bootleg, I remember feeling like I was just watching a bunch of clips that didn't have any cohesion. And I would like to believe that there was a sense of cohesion and storytelling that stretched from the beginning of the video to the end of the video. So obviously the introduction was a little bit separate from the rest of the video, but as soon as we dive into the Niflheim Frost, we start talking about the concepts within, and when we transition from Niflheim into Braytech Winter Wolf, we don't do a hard cut with a new title card. We basically just start a new paragraph and continue talking even about ideas and concepts that were in the previous one. So the sentiment after we finish with the Niflheim Frost section is that this gun is happy singing its crazy wild tune and wasting bullets. That's just what it loves to do. And we transition into the Braytech Winter Wolf, where we say, you know, it's cool that you want to sing your little song, but when we got to get down to business, we need a serious weapon. So it's all connected in that way. It's not just two completely disjointed sections. And then, of course, the Polaris Lance comes in after saying, I'm disappointed with the Wolf. I'm a little bit disappointed with the Frost, but this gun didn't disappoint me at all. So it was a continuous and cohesive narrative that stretched throughout, and I think I did a pretty good job of connecting it all, both with the clips, the music. It's not really connected, but the script, I think, did a good job of connecting everything. So with all of that said, we're going to wrap it up here by saying the name of the game is Destiny 2. The name of the channel is iBluairJgR. This has been another episode of Behind the Blue for the 50 Shades of Bray Foundry Favorites video for Destiny 2. So again, of course, if you enjoyed this, be sure to let me know. If you're somebody that edits video or does anything creative, photography, drawing, whatever it may be, feel free to talk creative stuff down in the comments below. I love doing that kind of stuff. If you have any opinions on the video overall, did you feel what I was trying to make you feel? Did the concepts that I talked about today, did they shine through? Or were there areas where I could have strengthened it a little bit? There's always a work in progress. Even after something is finished and I've put it in the can and said it's ready to be uploaded, there's still stuff where I can look back and say, okay, I could have done this better. I could have changed this a little bit. Next time I'm going to do this, blah, 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 etc., etc. So, you know, be sure to get down there in them comments and have a discussion. Or if you don't like it, hit the thumbs down button, tell me I suck, and then never come back again. Or you could come back anyway and just come back and just tell me I suck, just so I get some points and I go a little higher up on the page. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.